Good evening, everyone. It's Marcy Thomas, and I'm so excited to be back with you for another episode of Live Well Sister. So please come on in the room. Go ahead and invite your friends and get ready for what's going to be a really wonderful conversation that I'm super excited about, and you're going to find out here in a few minutes why. But if this is your first time joining us, welcome to Live Well Sister. This is a space where we come together and talk about a variety of things that help us to learn how to do just that, live well. And tonight is no exception. So I am coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, which our special guest is from there as well. And no, I didn't know her in Cleveland, as I was saying before. She would have been like 2 years old, but I moved away from there. But it's still exciting to make a connection with an Ohio sister that I have known for several years, because we are both very committed to serving and loving on and supporting Black women. So tonight's special guest is Tara Pringle Jefferson, who is the founder of the Self-Care Suite, which is a digital wellness community for Black women. Over the last decade, she has brought her wellness expertise to corporate audiences, including WW, which was Weight Watchers, SiriusXM, Wayfair, and Priceline. Her voice has been featured on New York Magazine's The Cut, Black Enterprise, and Essence. And when she's not writing, she finds peace among her houseplants and flowers. A Cleveland native like I am, she currently lives in Northeast Ohio with her husband and 2 children. And tonight we're here to talk about her book baby, which is just a week and a day old, Bloom How You Must, a Black woman's guide to self-care and generational healing. So without any further delay, let's welcome Tara Pringle Jefferson to Live Well for the first time.
The first time. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited.
This is thrilling.
Yes, well, first of all, congratulations on the book. I know it's been getting a lot of buzz. People are falling in love with it. And so that's so exciting just to see that for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think like a lot of authors, you are writing this book and you're preparing to put it out into the world, and you don't know what the reception is going to be like. You don't know if like 2 people going to pick it up, 1,000 people going to pick it up. So I'm just always grateful to every little bit of good news that's been coming along in this process.
Yes. And as I mentioned, of course, you being a homegirl, I'm proud of you for that reason, but also because I've been a part of your community for quite a while. And I remember when you first started talking about this. So I feel like I've been a part of the process from the very beginning.
Yeah. You've been there cheering me on like the other members of the suite. And this book wouldn't exist without the Self-Care Suite, without the women in the group, because so much of it is pulled from our events and our meetups and our gatherings. And they've taught me so much about self-care, being a Black woman. All of that is within the pages of Bloom How You Must. So I love being here with you, with a member of the suite. I call you all sweethearts. Wow. And you've been over the past few years, and a tremendous support.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. So for those who might not be familiar with you, just tell us a little bit about your journey, how you came to, be a writer. What was it that led you to want to even start something called the Self-Care Suite? What was the inspiration behind that, and how that led, we'll get into how that led into you writing this book, but just a little bit of background.
Yeah. So the suite, and all of my work with getting Bloom How You Must out, the suite is turning or has turned 10 years old in
Okay,
2025.
congratulations.
So hopefully in 2026, I'll be able to have some type of like celebration for it. But I created it in 2015 because I had just gone through a really prolonged period of depression following the birth of my two children, and I was really having a hard time finding my footing. I was, trying to figure out like what the rest of my life was going to look like. How could I get out of this pit? And I started doing all of the things. I started going to therapy. I started going to the gym. I started, prioritizing my friendships in a different way. I started, trying to set some boundaries and check in on myself. And I was doing all of the self care things. And
Mhm.
slowly but surely, I found like the fog starting to lift. And I realized that, some of the conversations that I'm having in my so many people, so many women, Black women, are having these same moments where we feel like we're stuck in the muck. We feel like we're always tired. We feel like we can't really get into a good groove because we have all of these stressors kind of attacking us every day. And so I figured the best way to solve this is to come together.
Mhm.
And the first thing that I did, and you know me, I kind of jump in the deep end, but the
Right?
first thing that I did for the self care suite was I hosted a 3-day retreat. Never mind that I had never done an overnight event before. Never knew anything about negotiating with hotels or room blocks or anything, but I just knew that we needed it. I knew that we needed space and time away from, the daily life, away from the house and the kids and where all the stress lives.
Mhm.
And I knew we needed that. And so over the years, we've done retreats, we've done sister circles, we've done virtual events as out of necessity due to the
Yeah.
pandemic. We've done all types of gatherings, and the core of it, the crux of it, is really letting Black women's lived experiences be the expertise that we need,
Mhm.
and making sure that, yeah, we have mental health professionals in the room, we have therapists, we have all of that, and they're there kind of, in the same capacity as therapy. They're there to witness, they're there to guide, but ultimately the answers come from us.
Yes.
And I firmly believe that. And so when I was gathering folks for the suite, I was listening. I'm a Black woman, first and foremost too. And so when I'm in these groups, these sister circles, I'm listening. I'm taking away lessons and things that I might want to tweak in my own life. And
Mhm.
so it was very easy for me then to say, okay, everybody can't come to a retreat. Everybody can't come to a sister circle. They're out of town. I can't be everywhere, but maybe I can write a book that
Yes.
really captures all of these stories and all of these great lessons that I'm learning from these women, and then more people can read it, and we don't have to hop on a plane to do so.
Right,
Right.
right. And that's just so smart to do that because I've often heard that, to your point, you can only be in so many places
Yep.
at a time. Everybody, there are people who are going to come online and join a group or whatever the case may be, but
Right.
they will pick up a book if they hear about it or go to their library and get it,
Yep.
whatever the case may be, and be able to like navigate some of the questions that you ask and really think about what it means to have this a space and place of wellness
Hmm.
because for the last several years we've been hearing a lot about it specifically in our community, even though it's always existed, right? We know
Hmm.
that. We know
Right.
that. That's just as a buzzword, whether it's self-care or wellness or leaning towards a soft life, all these different things that we're hearing, that more Black women are really starting to think about what that looks like and to embrace that. So a book like yours is just so meaningful for that reason.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted this book to exist in physical form so that it could be something that you can take with you. And if you are, going on a trip or you're going to see some girlfriends, etc., like you can have that with you. It's not something that you have to, log on to join. You don't have to buy a ticket. You take it with you, and then you can pass it on as well.
Right, right.
Hmm.
Now, the tagline is a Black woman's guide to self-care and generational healing. Now, I
Hmm.
know that you became a mom at like
At
26,
20.
20. Oh,
Hmm.
20. Wow. Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
So you were relatively young when you started to have to deal with some of the different things, a family, motherhood, career, all of these sorts of things. But I love the fact that you knew the importance of being able to lean into others who may have already experienced some of those things. Because, I'm going to just say it because I'm old enough to be your mama, right? And sometimes people of a certain age think that older people don't know what they're talking about. But I love the fact that you lean into the fact that it's a generational thing, that it's a communal thing. So is that something you picked up from your family, or an understanding of that, or was just some innate knowledge that you had?
I think it was really just within me. I don't know that I saw it as much in my family, that kind of like leaning on other generations and seeking advice from those who kind of walked the path before you. I think my mom tended to be a little bit more of a loner in that respect. But one of the things that I learned very quickly becoming a mom at 20, and I think about it now, my daughter is 19, and I'm like,
Oh,
I was a year
wow.
older than you when
Wow.
I had you. That's crazy. Like, who let
Wow.
me have a baby? Who let me have a baby? But when I became a mom, like that was my lifeline, like other women, trying to find other young moms, other moms to kind of commiserate with and say, like, my baby won't stop crying. Like, how do I do this? Or I'm trying to figure out how to spend time with her, but I also got schoolwork and trying to figure out how to juggle everything. And it really was that community sense that helped me through that period. So I learned very quickly once I had my daughter that, oh, I don't have to try to do this by myself.
Right.
I can be in conversation and connection with other moms, and they can kind of help me through it as well. And also, I will say, like, my mom was a tremendous help
Right.
in that respect. So leaning on her as well that helped me so much. I wouldn't have made it through without
Yeah,
her.
absolutely. Those moms always provide so much support in that. So in the book there are 8 chapters in the book, and
Mhm.
within those chapters, there's certain areas of wellness that you talk about, which we're going to kind of always tell people, if this is your first time watching, well, it's not really a spoiler type of book, but we're going to give you an appetizer of what to expect when you pick up a copy of Bloom How You Must, so that you can like read and look at the stories and answer the questions and all those sort of things and work through your own process. But in the book, you start out talking about Black wellness and why it matters.
Mhm.
And the reality of it is, if you are a Black woman existing in this country, in this world, we know that there are a lot of things that impact us in different ways. So just share a little bit about some of the things that we have to deal with that may look a little different from what someone else is dealing with.
Yeah, I really wanted in chapter one to set the table, right? Because some people come to the self care conversation differently. And I want us all to understand what's at stake. And so in that first chapter, I'm talking about where Black women are in society and how we have the greatest sleep deficit of all different races and backgrounds. We get the fewest hours of sleep, the fewest hours of quality sleep, races and genders. We have higher rates of depression, higher rates of heart disease, higher rate, like all of this litany of stats
Mm-hmm.
that are frankly dangerous. They erode our body, erodes our minds, attacks our spirit, and it's heavy. It's heavy being a Black woman in this society. And I'm even just talking about the United States, but any, anti-Black country, there's a
Right,
lot of them. There's a
right,
lot of them.
right,
But there's so much at stake with us as we talk about wellness and why that matters. And I also make it a point in that chapter to make it clear that I'm not suggesting by any means that like a bubble bath or a nap is going to fix policy and all of these other larger issues that we're trying to fix
right,
in society. But what it is our survival tools
right.
to let us thrive in the meantime. How are we going to make it through these periods? And it's always been these periods in our
Right,
history. How do
right.
we make it through with some semblance of wellness and sanity and connection and comfort?
Mm,
And I try to lay that out in the first chapter in a way that lets you understand, like, this is radical work This is necessary work. It's urgent work. And it's not something that you want to put off for too long, because there's real life ramifications for your health and your well-being if you continue on a path where you're not prioritizing yourself or your wellness.
Mm-hmm. And it's just so important because, as I told you before we came on, there are a lot of things that I have been thinking about. I have kind of taken a step back from certain things to allow more
Yeah.
space for me to think about, what I want my future to look like and how I
Yeah.
want to move going forward. So reading this book is like so in alignment with those things that I've been thinking about. But, it's important that we tap in, but for those who may not have already done it, it's never too late. That's the
Mm-hmm.
to
Never too
really
late.
start thinking about why your wellness matters and thinking about finding ways to prioritize your own health and well-being. Because what's the saying? You can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm-hmm. No, cannot pour from an empty cup. There's all these sayings, right? You
Right,
can't pour from an empty cup. Make sure you put your mask on first before
right,
you assist
right,
anybody else. There's
right.
all of these sayings around here, and a lot of them, there's truth to it. In a way that we have to remember that we are our first priority.
Right.
We can't, spend all this time over here hanging out, taking care of kids, taking care of family members, killing it at work, and then we're neglecting our first responsibility, which is ourselves.
Mm-hmm. But I have to ask, but what do you say to the woman? Because I know it comes up in the book. What do you say
Mhm.
to the woman who says, "Oh, but I can't do that because everybody needs me"?
Mhm. Yes, that is a common fear, and I don't think people identify it as a fear. Right? It's a common fear that if I take the time to focus on myself, if I shift some things around so that I do not feel depleted at the end of the week, if I have the time on my calendar for some type of replenishment, they feel like it's going to throw everything else out of whack in their life, and then they'll lose their space
Mhm.
in whatever structure they have set for their life or their family or their whatever. And I say in the book, like, I'll be honest with you, it might shift some things. It
Right,
might shift some things in a way that is a little uncomfortable for you.
right.
But I also say in the book that a life that depends on your exhaustion is not sustainable.
That's
It's
right.
not worth keeping. And so we have to think about the ways that we exist and the ways that we continue to operate through exhaustion and
Mhm,
fatigue and overwhelm. Those become our defaults, and we're
mhm.
scared of what happens when exhaustion isn't the default, when fatigue or overwhelm isn't the default. It might take some shifting, and it might cause some little earthquakes, but at the
Right.
other side of that, it's peace, it's restfulness, it's relaxation, it's joy. And so if
Mhm.
we can get past that, like, messy middle, which is what Bloom How You Must is designed to do,
Right.
the whole world opens up for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, bloom how you must.
Yeah.
You are using a garden metaphor, but tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about, what the title means and, what led you to want to use like a garden or blooming to talk about these concepts.
Yeah. So the title itself comes from a Lucille Clifton poem, Mulberry Fields, and was in love with. I've been in love with Lucille Clifton. I have a couple of her books over here, like, almost within arm's reach. But Lucille Clifton was a phenomenal poet.
Mhm.
I feel like "Come Celebrate with Me" is probably
Mhm.
one of her more popular poems. But Mulberry Fields, it's I hate whenever somebody asks me about this, I kind of hate talking about that poem in particular because it is kind of bleak.
Okay.
It is kind of bleak. It's about a cemetery for the enslaved that got kind of bulldozed and removed to make room for, I want to say, the South Carolina State House.
Okay.
And at the end of the poem, after she kind of describes everything that happened at the end of the poem, she says, "Bloom how you must, I say."
Right. Right.
And it's really, to me, a recognition that even if folks try to erase us, even if they try to say that what we've gone through doesn't matter, even if they try to say that our lives don't matter, it's still up to us to bloom anyway, to bloom
Right.
how we must in all types of ways. And I didn't have to fight for the title at all.
That's good.
I always came with that with the manuscript, and nobody in my publishing team ever suggested that we change it. But it's really, to me, thinking about like the urgency of it, and the it's a requirement, for
Mhm.
Black women, for us to think about our wellness, because I want us to be good from the time we're born to the time that we leave here. I want us to be good in as many ways as possible. So I'm thinking about that blooming theme and flowers. I think Black women are just some of the most incredible people
Absolutely.
walking this planet. And so if you think about what flowers and seeds and all that represents, you think about how little teeny tiny seeds
Mhm.
grow into these beautiful, majestic plants, and how
Mhm.
everything that the plant needs is already there. All of the material for it to grow,
Yes.
it's already there. All it needs is a little bit of care and a little
Mm.
bit of attention, and it's beautiful. So that theme of growing came to me immediately, as I like to call myself like a farmer, because I grew one
Yes.
potato. I grew one potato this summer and a whole bunch of flowers.
Yes.
And the process of it, it's so similar to that self-care process of looking at the soil and making sure that your soil is good and make sure that you're tending to it. And it's the same process, for Black women self-care. It's the same exact process.
Yes. I love that. I love that. And of course, this cover is beautiful.
Thank you.
I love the cover on that
Yes.
book. Yes. So into the going into some of the chapters.
Mhm.
In the very first one, you talk about physical wellness, coming home to ourselves. And just so everybody knows, in each chapter, she's basically asking you, who taught you how to care for your body? So in each
Mhm.
one, she asks that, starts off, with that question, like, who taught you to care? Because the thing of it is, sometimes, well, let me back up just a little bit. In putting the book together, you had concepts and you had people that you talked to. You interviewed, how many people did you end up interviewing?
So officially it's like 103.
Okay, about 103 women ranging
Mhm.
in age from 19 to 99 or something like
Mhm.
that.
Yep, you got it.
So, you talk to a whole lot of people to get, some ideas and help you to walk through this process. You actually interviewed me, which I was blessed and honored to do
Yes.
that. So thank you for that. But in doing that, I remember you asking me some of these
Mhm.
questions, who taught you? And in some cases, we can't really answer it because maybe nobody taught us. So I
Yeah.
just want to
Yeah.
start there before I get into what it's all about. But thinking about the fact that people, maybe we weren't taught certain things.
Mhm. Yeah. I don't think people recognize how influential our early years are to our adulthood. I think sometimes we think, okay, we turned 18 or however old we were, we left the house, like I'm good, I'm out on my own, I'm making my own decisions. But a lot of the lessons, things that we saw in our lives, whether it was spoken or unspoken, those lessons stay with us long after childhood. So just
Mhm.
even as like a teeny tiny example, when I was growing up, my grandmother, and this isn't in the book, but my grandmother wouldn't allow us to drink while we ate.
Mm,
And, she's like, oh, you're going to, fill up on juice and then you're not going to eat your food, blah, blah, blah. And I'm 40 and I still have to remind myself, I'm grown.
I can drink, I can drink if I
I
want
can
to.
drink this juice before I'm done with my food. I
Right.
can do it. I had to train myself to take sips during my meals.
Mhm.
And that's just a very, very tiny example of how those lessons stick with you. But I really wanted, if we're going to have some sustainable changes to our self care practice, I really wanted us to get down to the root of it all and
Mhm.
look at what examples did you have, whether overt or hidden. What
Mhm.
examples did you have growing up? And sometimes I ask people, like, did you ever see your mom take care of herself? Did you ever see your mom relax? What kind of things did your mom do when she was stressed? I would ask these questions, and I love when they had to pause and think about it and try to see if there
Mm.
was any sense of recognition there. And often at first, no, there wasn't any.
Right.
Because you're talking about Black women of a certain age. Most
Right.
of their moms are at least, 50 and up,
Mm.
at this point that I'm doing the interviews. So no, there wasn't a lot of examples, but there are some in
There
some
are
cases.
some, yes.
And I wrote in the book that in your self-care history, if you're thinking back to your mom and your grandma and all these other women, that that self-care legacy, it might be more a whisper than a roar,
Mhm.
but it's there. And you just have to kind of think about different ways that it might have shown up. And if it wasn't there at all, that's all the more reason that we can be the generation that shifts things for the generation that comes after us.
Right, absolutely. And I do want to share this comment before we go on. Thank you for clarifying that for us. That's why I love the lessons from my perennial garden. I cut them
Mhm.
back each fall for beautiful blooms in the spring, summer. Yep, there's some pruning that has to go on
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
want
there's
things
some
to
pruning.
bloom. Yeah,
Ex-
bloom beautifully.
Exactly, exactly. Because sometimes we resist pruning because we're like, oh, it grew so much, and we love what it represents and what it is, but not knowing that pruning is what helps the new growth to shoot through in the
Mhm,
spring.
mhm.
So definitely love the blooming and the gardening theme throughout, because even if you don't garden, everybody kind of knows the basics of the soil and the sun and the
Right.
roots and all of that. So you can still follow along even if you're not a gardener.
Right, right. So, but just thinking about something that you said a little earlier in this
Mhm.
first part, you talk about who taught you how to care for your body, and you already spoke on rest. And I'm gonna tell you, I felt convicted from reading that because I will admit some days is worse than others, but that a lot of times we're not getting adequate rest.
Mhm.
And right now I'm talking specifically about sleep.
Yeah.
We're not getting adequate sleep where we might be existing on, 5 hours or, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying you have to sleep 10 hours a
Yeah.
night, but just thinking about what that is and how that impacts us. And you talk about in this book your own journey of being a young mom and working really hard and not really sleeping and how it started to impact you physically.
Yeah. Yeah. And I opened the book with that story of working too many hours, having too many clients as a freelancer, working 18-hour days, sitting in one spot in front of the computer. My eyes are blurry. I can't really see. And how that led me to urgent care, where a doctor, did the regular exam and they're uncovering all these issues. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I had high blood pressure. Oh, I didn't even know, like, oh, my lymph nodes are swollen. Oh, I didn't even, all of these different things. And so at the end of the appointment, the doctor sits me down. I'm trying to get out of there and go get my prescription and move about my day. And the doctor sits me down and she says, listen, this was a Friday. And she said, I want you to go home. I want you to get in the bed, and I don't want you to get out until Monday. I want you to
Mhm.
rest this entire weekend. And she said, because you are moving so fast and you're doing so much that you don't even recognize the signs and the signals that your body is giving you.
Right.
And again, when she said that, I was like, girl, I got deadlines. I can't be in the bed all weekend. I got to go pick the kids up from school. Like, I can't do that. And I went home. I did, some stuff that I needed to do in the house. And I said, you know what? I'm going to lay down. I'm going
Mm.
to lay down. And I got in the bed and I stayed there most of the weekend. I might have gotten up to, get some lunch or something like that, but I rested that weekend. And I realized that now that doctor probably saved my life, because
Yes.
it was in that moment that everything started to shift for me. I think about my mother, and I talk about this in the book as well. I think about my mother working two jobs and three jobs at the same time as a nurse, and how she would have the only time off that she had was between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. So she had two full-time jobs, Monday through Friday, and then she had a weekend shift, a different weekend job. And so she would come home from her job at 6 p.m. She would try to sleep from like 7 to 10. And then she would get up and go to her work again at 11 p.m. and work all the way through till 6 p.m. the next day.
Wow.
So that was an example that I had of, like, this is possible. Like, you can work, 16 hours a day, and have, 3 hours a day to sleep. You can do that if you really need to, if you really want to. So when I was doing the same thing, When I was in my early 20s, I thought nothing of it. I was like, okay, this is how you do it. You work hard, you take care of your family, you do all of these things. And my mother has health issues now,
Mm.
from working herself like that. She kept that schedule for 8 years.
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
realize it was that long. I was busy, with my kids and
Right.
and all of that stuff. So I didn't realize it was 8 years of that schedule.
Wow.
So some of the health issues that she has now, I am sure Mark go back to that time period where she just wasn't getting adequate rest. She wasn't sleeping. Yeah,
Right.
for years.
Yeah, and that's so important. And that's why I felt convicted, because there are times
Mhm.
when I don't get as much rest as that I know that I really need. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm going to work on that. Actually, that when I was talking about goals for the next year, that is something that I put in there, like just learning. And you talk about it later in the book, like coming up with processes and things to kind of help
Mhm.
you, how you start your day, how you end your day, to kind of help making sure you get rest and things like that. So you do talk about, give us some ideas in the book. But I do want to share these comments. This is a great conversation. I am 72, and as I listen, I'm
Mhm.
thinking of my late mother, who basically went to work, went to church, and took care of daddy, my sister, and me. Lots to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And that's that I talked to, a good number of women in their 70s in the writing of this book, and they had very similar stories.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I loved about those stories is that as I asked them about their mother, they then began to talk about their daughters. So the
Mm.
70-year-olds were talking about their daughters who were maybe in their 30s and 40s and sometimes 50s. And they talked about how their daughters were shifting the
Mhm.
generational.
Nope. Might be having a little internet issue. It froze for a second. Hopefully you're still there, Tara.
Yeah, I absolutely love that shift.
Okay. Yeah, it froze up for a second. So
Yeah, yeah.
yes, it's good to see the shift starting to occur. And actually, you do talk about this concept in the book. And I'm thinking about our ancestral foremothers and the impact of epigenetics and weathering. And you do talk about weathering on
Mhm.
modern day Black women. I have 9 granddaughters, so this matters.
Yeah,
Yes. And just
yeah.
speak on weathering for a moment, because there's some people who might not even know what that means.
Yeah, sure. So, and I do talk about that in chapter 1, where I'm talking about, the urgency of looking at our wellness. And it's looking at the fact that in this society, because of what the simplest way that I can describe it, because of what Black women have endured, what we have to deal with professionally in our offices, in the world, microaggressions, regular or old aggressions, that our bodies are aging faster as a result.
Mm.
So you might have a Black woman and a white woman that are both biologically 40 years old, but the Black woman, if you look at her on a more cellular level, she is 52 maybe. So thinking
Mhm.
about the ways that our bodies respond to the stress,
Right.
daily life, and how our goal is to soothe ourselves, to comfort ourselves, to take care of ourselves in the best way possible, because it's a violent society. It's
It
a
is.
violent society. And the more that we can do, whether that's community care, whether that's coming together, gathering, whether it is prioritizing our sleep, whatever
Mm.
we can do to nourish and comfort and heal these bodies, that's on us to make sure that we take up the mantle and do it promptly.
Absolutely. And I love that you're thinking about your granddaughters, because it is important,
Mhm.
and the whole concept of generational healing, because the
Mhm.
more things that we can pass along and help people to understand. And I know that my mom always watches. She's probably watching now, and she
Yeah.
watches the shows and she learns things, and she's 80. So it's,
Mhm.
again, as we said earlier, it's never too late to learn things that can help you to have, a better quality of life. But in this chapter, you also talk about sensuality, sexuality, the difference between the two, embracing pleasure and all those sorts of things. So we won't have time to talk about all of it, but that's kind of what people can expect out of chapter 1. Now, in chapter 2, well, technically chapter 3, you talk about
Mhm.
our friends, our friends ourselves, which is basically our social wellness and
Yes.
our relationships. And we've already kind of talked about it a little bit in terms of having community, but it is so important for us to have a sense of community.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I think Black women do very well when it comes to self care is that sense of gathering and that sense of being there for your friend. I think Black women are the best friends that you can have because we show up
Mhm.
so quickly and easily. And that's been my experience. Some people may not have had the same experience, but that's been my experience for most of my adult life is that Black women show up whenever I need them. One of the things that I discovered though in the research is that Black women are great at showing up for other people. We're not as great at showing up for ourselves.
Mhm.
So in that way, I mean being vulnerable about what we're really going through, not putting on a mask and pretending everything's okay when inside we're crumbling.
Mhm.
Not wanting to be a burden to our friends or not wanting to be a burden to our family. Those are all things that I found when researching and interviewing that people really struggled with. So I wanted to make it a point in this chapter to talk about vulnerability and to talk about what it could look like to put the armor down so
Mhm.
that we could find those safe, trusted spaces and let them support us in a way that feels really good to our spirits. So
Right.
as much as Black women are amazing friends, it's our weakness there.
Okay, I had a little frozen moment again. Let's see.
Not the one, yeah, who has it all together,
Right.
and relinquishing the title of being the strong friend
Right.
and being able to be the one who says, okay, you know what, I don't have it all together this week, and that's okay. That's
Mm.
okay. We will all survive and we'll come together and I'll get care this week, you get care next week, and the world keeps on spinning. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just so important. One of the things I have said for years is that I feel that it's very important to have like your trusted tribe. You call them first responders in your book.
Mhm.
Just those had to have those people to be around you and to support you and to do life together. That is
Yes.
so important. And I mean, of course, like with anything else, we have to exercise caution because everybody can't necessarily be in that
Everybody can.
space. Everybody can't take that role. But understanding that it is important for us to do the things that we need to do to find that group that is going to be a part of that, whether it's family or chosen family or whatever the case may be. So I don't.
Mhm.
So that's what we talk about in that chapter. Next, we talk about. I might have wrote it down wrong. Carving our own lane. So that's our professional wellness, and this is huge because unless you're of this age and stage of life where you're retired, if you are still working, work takes up so much of our lives. And
Yes.
us being able to feel a sense of wellness and wholeness in those workspaces, I think is very important.
Yeah. And most of the time, and I might have put this in the book as well, but most of the time when people think about self care and they think about wellness, they think about physical, they may think about mental and emotional, even think a little bit about social, but professional wellness and thinking about how you can be well in this role that you have, maybe 40 hours a week, if not more,
Right.
thinking about how we can be well in that space. And in that chapter, I really wanted to talk about things that we can control, because we can't necessarily control what our boss does. We can't necessarily control coworkers or project deadlines and things like that. So I really wanted to talk about what it means on a personal level to try to be well professionally. So thinking about our own definitions of success and thinking about, maybe taking a career break, if we
Mm.
can figure out how to manage that. Imposter syndrome, thinking about ways that we can infuse joy into our business as entrepreneurs. All of that is within our control. And so I really wanted to focus on that because, again, like you said, we spend so much time at work. We spend so
Mhm.
much time in this society, we have to figure out a way to support ourselves and to make
Right.
money. There's no other option unless you know, really marry rich or come into the lottery and I've
Right.
been trying to get my lottery strategy together. So,
No, that's
so
right.
otherwise, you know, you have to figure out a way to support yourself. So thinking about those ways that we can shift wellness professionally, that's within our control. Mhm.
Yes. And it is definitely a challenge because, there are so many people I think find themselves in spaces where it's like, okay, if they, well, having a good job was what you consider to be a quote
Yeah.
unquote good job, making a certain amount of money, maybe feeling like, okay, these things that I'm suffering in this job are just a part of me being able to, to have, what should I say, the benefit of it and the cost. So the
Mhm.
cost that I'm paying to have this, the benefits outweigh the cost. But, as we've already talked about, sometimes there could be things that are happening to us that, is it really worth it?
Yeah, yeah. It can be difficult sometimes to figure out like that cost benefit, and think about whether I stay or I go. When I was interviewing women for this chapter in particular, there was some that just shifted, you know, industries entirely. One went from, I think she was like an investment banker and, you know, complete boys club. She felt like her superiors had never even talked to Black people before,
Right.
just some of the things that they would say. And she shifted industries entirely and went to law school of all things, and ended up, I think, in corporate law and shifted in a way. She still has, you know, she still had issues
Right.
here and there with different jobs, but she really made it a point to try to go where she was valued.
Mhm.
And it took time to be able to figure it out and plot it out, but she knew that she mattered, and she knew that her environment where she's spending so much time each week, she knew that it was important that she felt safe there, that she felt like she was valued, and that being a Black woman wasn't, in that environment. She wanted to be in an environment where being a Black woman wasn't a detriment to her goals and her progress.
Right. Right. And that's just so important. And again, food for thought, things to think about. But in this particular chapter, I like that you talk about sabbaticals because
Mhm.
actually, on my day job, I'm actually on a sabbatical right now. We do one in December
That's
and
right.
part of
Yeah.
January. So I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
sabbatical. But
Yes.
everybody isn't necessarily in a position to like
Mhm.
have time off of work, especially if it's paid time off of work. But
Mhm.
for those who might need to get breaks from time to time, I like that you suggest mini sabbaticals. So
Mhm.
kind of tell us what that is.
Yeah. So in the book, I do talk to a couple of women who were able to take more lengthy sabbaticals. So one, Stephanie, I think she took at least a year or 14 months to travel the world, because she told me that she had been working since she was 17
Mm,
and she was going to work until she was 67. So that was 50 years that she was going to be in the workforce. And she wanted to take 1 year, 1 year while her body was on her side, while her knees were still good, while her eyesight was still good, that she could travel and see those places that she had previously only seen on the screensaver at her computer at work.
right.
And so seeing Stephanie, who wasn't making a ton of money at the time, I think she said she was only making maybe $17 an hour, but able to save enough to travel for a year. I wanted to put that in the book because it's meant to be an example of what is possible, even if it's not your preference, even if it's not something that you want to do. I hope that this book gets your imagination revving. How could I take care of myself in a better way? What's possible for me? And so people reading that, and I even put it in the book because I can hear some of y'all now, like, I don't want to do that for a year.
Right.
The way my life is set up, I got kids. I
Right.
don't, you know, I got a house, I got a mortgage. I don't want to do all that. And I get it. So I made sure that I put in the book, like, we can do like mini sabbaticals. We can do ways where we maximize our PTO, or we just have, like the doctor told me that time where I had to go home on a Friday and get in bed all weekend. We can
Hmm.
have those moments where we pull away from the noise, we pull away from from work, or we pull away from our families, our kids, whatever, and spend that intentional time, one-on-one time with ourselves. Because one, we're worth it. And two, it really does make a difference when you're able to hear yourself think. And so many of us, our lives are so busy and so noisy on a regular basis that we can't even hear ourselves think. We can't even get our perspective of where we are. And a mini sabbatical or a more lengthy sabbatical, if you can figure out ways to orchestrate it, is the perfect place for you to come home to yourself and think about where you are and where you'd like to go.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of going back to what was happening before, having that trusted tribe, that family, those people that are part of your circle, that you all are helping each other. So like maybe this weekend your best friend takes the kids, and in a couple of weeks you take the kids, and give that person a chance to have a break. So there are a lot of different ways to do that, and I love the idea of that, because believe it or not, my therapist told me that I needed to find a weekend where I just sit and do nothing. I haven't done it yet, but it's coming soon.
Yeah, a weekend where you sit and do nothing. I know that's hard for a lot of people because they're like, "What do you mean, sit and do nothing?" You can sit and do nothing, or you can sit and do something that replenishes you, that fills you up. So if you are an artist at heart, you want to sit and go buy yourself some clay or buy yourself some watercolors, spend time doing that, and not focused on other chores and things that you have to do, but make sure that you're doing something that fills you up in a way that you don't typically get to do. I think that also makes a sabbatical or a little mini break or an extended break worthwhile.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So next you talk about fill me up. That's your spiritual wellness.
Yeah.
And I love the way that you present it, because, spirituality can be a tricky topic for a lot of people.
Yes.
But you present it in such a way that, no matter what your faith or your belief system is, there is a way to tap into spiritual wellness and spiritual wholeness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I didn't want to. Obviously, a lot of Black women, especially in the United States, were Christian, right? But I wanted to make sure that even if somebody picked up the book and they didn't subscribe to any religion, they say they were atheist or agnostic, I wanted them to still be able to pick up the book and see themselves in it, in that chapter. I don't want anybody skipping, different things. And so I wanted to focus it on really what I think is at the heart of spirituality, which is your relationship with the world around you, who you are as a spiritual person, who you are as a human soul, and your relationship to other people around you, your relationship to the natural world around you, the trees, the grass, the air, all the rocks, all of that. And then also your relationship with the divine, if you believe in that. And thinking about the chapters and writing them. I think the spiritual chapter was the one that my editor and I tweaked the most.
Really?
Yeah, I think that was the one that we tweaked the most, because she just really wanted to make sure, again, like I was saying, that people across the board could relate to it, because we are a very, the research shows that Black women are among the most religious group in the United States.
Yes.
Above all, I think at the latest count, the research showed like 97% or something of Black women in some form of higher power. And I really wanted to make sure that we, of all the chapters in the book, I think our spiritual lens is inherited very easily. And so if you grew up, Kojic, or you grew up Baptist, you usually will, gravitate towards a Baptist church or AME, Catholic, whatever you kind of grew up in. And it takes a real concerted effort to figure out what your path might be if it isn't what you grew up steeped in. And I wanted us to really sit and think about that, as I talk about in every chapter, who taught you. Really think about what it is that you need, because I also saw from the research that we are still the most religious group, but across the board, church attendance
It's
which is a
down.
cornerstone of our faith practices, but it's down across the board. And so if it's down, if we're not going to church, if we're not gathering to fortify our faith, what are we doing? What are we doing instead? And really asking the questions that we can sit and we can think about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you saw value in de-stringing
Mm-hmm.
between religion and spirituality. Yes, they're definitely two
Yeah,
different things. Two different things. So
definitely.
that is good, and I can appreciate that. For a lot of reasons that I just think that that's important because again, it's like who taught you, and the thing of it is, and you do talk about it some in the book. A lot of times what should I say there? Oh, distinguishing. Okay. Yeah, I was wondering what de-stringing was.
We got it. We
But
knew.
we knew what you meant. We got
We
the
knew what
gist
you
of
meant.
it. Thank you.
Mhm.
But it is like who taught you? But as we learn more and we get more information, sometimes a lot of people are beginning to deconstruct some of the things that maybe Big Mama and Big Mama before her and all that taught us. And it's not to say that there's no respect for the things that other people did, but understanding that everybody has to find their own way. And I mean, and even the Bible, the good book said, work out your own salvation. So people have
Yes.
to figure out what that is for them and not necessarily do a thing just because it's a way that it's always been done. So I definitely appreciate you talking about that and even bringing in like nature and spending time in nature, which is hey, the creator's creation is nature, right?
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
thinking about our ancestors and paying homage to our ancestors and things like that. So I just think that that is so important. But one other thing that you do talk about that I think is important when we start thinking about spirituality
Mhm.
is being able to have a level of self-compassion, because I think
Mhm.
that a lot of the issues that people might have with even thinking about something else is shame or things that other people will put
Yes.
on them. So learning how to have compassion for yourself.
Yeah, and I wanted that was probably one of the first sections of the chapter that I wrote because I with the self care suite, I ask people a couple of questions before they join. And one of the questions is always, what do you struggle with the most? And people always say, probably 80% of the time, they say something about guilt or I feel ashamed, or anytime I try to do something for myself, I feel guilty. And
Mm,
there's a real struggle with prioritizing yourself, particularly in the Black community. There's a real struggle with recognizing that you are a human being that deserves grace, that deserves wellness, that deserves hugs and softness. Like there's so much guilt around it, and guilt is reserved for when you feel like you're doing something wrong.
right.
So why does wellness, why did just taking care of yourself, why does it feel wrong? Let's sit with that and let's work it out, which is why I said let's talk about this self-compassion bit. We have to.
Yes. Yes, we have to learn to have compassion for ourselves and give ourselves grace and also be willing to extend it to others,
Yes.
because that's a thing as well. We don't extend to others what we want others to extend to us.
Hmm.
So, and especially when you're thinking about being in community, you have to be able to navigate that.
Definitely have to navigate it. And just remember also, like I said before, like the guilt that you have over, messing up or oh, I didn't quite do that right. Replace some of that with grace for yourself and remind yourself again. And I say this throughout the book, Black women have to get in touch with their humanity and remember that they are human. Humans mess up sometimes. Humans are, they may make mistakes. They need rest. They need all of these different things. And I think so far in a lot of my research, a lot of my interviews, that is the number one thing that Black women struggle with. It's like, oh yeah, like I am allowed to make a mistake, or I am allowed to mess up, or I am allowed to fall short from time to time. And I think it's my job, and this Bloom How You Must is my contribution to helping Black women let go of that guilt, let go of that shame, and just flourish, knowing that they are wonderfully made human beings.
Right, absolutely. That we are.
Mhm.
Now, settling our nerves, mental and emotional wellness. That's one as well, because a lot of that, the stress ties into a lot of what we're dealing with emotionally, and the stress coming from all these different places that can tap into how we feel mentally or how we show up mentally and with our emotional well-being in that. So what is it that the main point that you wanted to get across in that particular section?
Yeah. So this section, the mental and emotional wellness, um, I'll first say when I first wrote the book, this section was like 20 pages longer
Oh
than
wow.
it
Okay. Okay.
than it ended up being. Because I had a lot to say. I had a lot to say about mental and emotional wellness, as you can probably assume.
Mhm.
I was going on for pages and pages and pages and pages. I mean, my editor was like, "Okay, girl, this one is so big, and we
Right.
have a word count that we have to adhere to." But in thinking about what I wanted to put in that chapter, I really wanted to have Black women sit with the idea that mental health is something, and emotional health is something that, or strong mental health and strong emotional health is something that our ancestors absolutely desered. It
Absolutely.
wasn't really a conversation. It wasn't top of mind because it couldn't be. If we think about, 150, 200 years ago, it couldn't be top of mind for
Right.
our ancestors. They had no agency over caring for themselves. Society, even though it feels very oppressive now, was 10 times as such back then. So there wasn't really no conversation. There wasn't any language around it. And I think one of the frameworks that a lot of Black women cling to that is expected of us is that, well, if my grandma did it, I can do it. Or my grandma went through so much more, my ancestors went through so much more. How can I complain? How can I say I'm depressed, and were they depressed? In some cases, yes. In some cases, yes. I did a lot of research about what mental health looked like for the enslaved. And as you can guess, not great, right? Not great. There
Yeah.
was a couple of mental hospitals that took in enslaved patients and took care of them, not to any, great standards that the white patients would receive. But there
Right.
were spaces where families would say, "Hey, something's wrong with my husband or something's wrong with my wife." And there were spaces that they could go to see what was happening. But I really wanted in this chapter for Black women to think about not just, okay, well, I'm stressed. This is how I'm going to deal with the stress. But I wanted to think about what are some of these chronic stressors
Mm.
that may be bothering us and we maybe need to do something about. So I remember my editor wanted me to shift. I have a section in here about relationships.
Yes, you do.
And the editor wanted me to shift it to the social wellness chapter, which it could have fit there,
Right.
absolutely. But I really wanted women to think about their intimate relationships and how that may have an impact on their mental health.
Mm.
I'm like I said, I just turned 40, and so a lot of my friendships, a lot of friends that I have, they are currently in that divorce. It's like kind of divorce season
Mm.
where they've decided, you know what, the cost of staying in this relationship, it's too great to my mental health.
Mm.
There may be some type of verbal or emotional abuse. It may just be incompatibility, but they are really looking at what is the impact of these intimate relationships. And I thought that was really important to point out and pause on, so that women could really, all right, let me think about this in a deeper way.
Exactly. Actually, I have a comment that goes along with that. For me, walking away from long-term relationships was part of my emotional wellness.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of times, people get into relationships for a lot of different reasons, and there is an evolution that happens
yeah,
within people, and many times as you evolve, you realize that something that may have worked at one point in time in your life doesn't necessarily work in the same way.
yeah.
But you're still being, there's something that's still holding you in that space. So really
Mhm.
to be able to think about what that is and what the bloomed person, I know bloomed isn't necessarily, oh yeah, bloomed is a word, but once you have bloomed, once you have evolved, things can look a whole lot different.
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm. So This one I really loved as well. In the next section, we talk about honoring our creativity.
Yes.
And so, like you talked about painting earlier, I don't know if you knew this, Tara, but the paintings
Mhm.
behind me are mine.
Yes.
I haven't
Yes.
been in a long time, but yes,
Yes.
on that break I take, I need to spend some time getting
Hmm.
the paints back out. But why do you feel that it's so important for us as Black women to really tap into various forms of creativity?
Yeah. When I, and again, this is my favorite chapter to write. If
Okay.
anybody watches this and they go out and get the book, you can read chapter 1 first and then go ahead to chapter 7 because it's my favorite.
Okay. Okay.
It is my favorite because it's really, for me, it was one of the chapters where I struggled the most with allowing myself to be creative, because as Black women, we're often in these boxes where we have to show up perfect. Being messy isn't really allowed. We aren't
Mm,
able to dabble. We got to be experts in order to be taken seriously. Like, there's so many things, there's so much rigidity with
mm,
being a Black woman. And this chapter is all about giving yourself the space and the permission to play,
mhm,
to cultivate a deeper imagination for yourself, to find freedom in some of the habits and experiences that you have. So this one is really at its core about giving women, Black women, the permission to explore and to
mhm,
play and have fun. So
mhm.
much of our lives are hard and rocky and stressful, but this chapter is reminding you that throughout all the years, all the layers, there's this little girl inside of you that used to just love to ice skate, or just used to love to paint, or just used to love to sketch. There was always something I found in the interviews that just used to light you up with joy. And
Mm,
it's really about finding that. And maybe if you can't remember what it was back then, think about what lights you up now.
right,
Because when you have that space where you are free to kind of create however you like, there are no rules. And how
right.
often do we have spaces in our lives where there's no rules, there's no consequences? It doesn't matter if you use a green paint or a brown paint or a yellow,
Mhm,
it doesn't matter. And we need those spaces to be able to play. I did research on play research and how it literally shapes our brain chemistry. Like, it shifts it when we're able to set down the burdens of the day and play.
mm.
The researchers, there's all types of research on play and how important it is in our development, but it doesn't stop when we're children. Like that, those benefits continue
It's
throughout adulthood. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, even though it involves like another other people, but like I enjoy playing like maybe some of the childhood games and bringing them back out and getting into all of that. I mean, that's play in the, I guess, the real or traditional sense of the word, or like going, like you mentioned, your son, what was he, on the swings or something,
Yep. Hmm.
in the book. So yeah, I mean, there's those ways, but then there's other things like those creative things that you may have done before or whatever. Because quiet as it's kept me doing this is something that I thought about as a young person, and even though it's, I guess it's work, so to speak, it is tapping into something that I thought about as a young person, being able to sit and have conversations with other Black women. So it came back, it never went away, and here I am doing this now. I'm being able to talk to you. So it definitely is good to be able to do that. And in that chapter, you also talk about those are ways to find freedom and
Hmm.
to really tap into your imagination. Because when you tap into your imagination, it just opens up so many other things.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we're imagination deficient in so many ways, because when life gets harder, you get laser focused on the basics, on the necessities. Okay, this is what it is. This is what I have to do today, tomorrow, the next day. And again, it kind of goes back to giving yourself that space to dream, and that space to imagine, and that space to think about, okay, what's really important to me and how can I prioritize that? So I hope, anybody picks up a copy of the book, I hope that the time that you spend with the book is your pause time, is your contemplation and reflection time, that's what that gives you, so that you can think for yourself, okay, what do I need? Because I don't have all the answers for you. You have all the answers. And this book is really just a guide to help you get there.
Right. And, as I mentioned earlier, there are questions throughout. So, of
Mhm.
course, we can't give you the whole meal in this conversation, but
Yeah.
just to let you know some of what the book talks about and things to think about and ponder. And I definitely think it'd be something that would be good to do in like group settings with friends and things like that, for sure.
Oh, definitely.
So, in the very last chapter, you talk about going back to that, thinking of how we grow. We grow in
Mhm.
community. How we have to tend to our gardens, and part of that is being able to grow in community.
Yeah.
So, just to wrap up what Bloom How You Must is talking about in this chapter, we're talking about being in full bloom.
Yes, in full bloom. This chapter was so much fun to write. And I have to be honest, my husband suggested ending the chapter the way that it does,
Okay.
with a letter to my daughter, who was, I think, 18 at the time that I
Hmm.
finished the book. And it's really important that as Black women, like, we have the space to heal, that we have the space and the time to reflect on our lives, and it's not always easy. So I do
Hmm.
think that it is like this work, reading this book, I think it does happen well. It would happen well in groups. That's why I'm so excited to be chatting with book clubs and things like that, because often we need other people to kind of
Right.
help us create that space in our lives. Sometimes
Right.
if we're left to do it on our own devices, it's not going to happen.
Right.
But if we can pair it with some good girl time, or we can, see our friend and feel light and joyful, then yeah, then some of this other conversation can happen and those changes can be made. So I hope when people read the book and they get to the final chapter, I hope that it sums it all up and it creates this desire within you to sit down, grab your journal, write some of these, your thoughts and your question, or the answers to some of the questions that I've asked throughout the book. And it really will, like, I firmly believe, I stand behind every single chapter. I
Mhm.
really do believe if you sit with it and you think about where you've been, it you have your own roadmap of how you want to get to where you'll go in the future.
Right, right. And one thing you do say simple shifts
Yeah.
because a lot of people you look at this, 300-page book, you think, "Oh my gosh, I got to go and make all of these changes." And it's like, "No, you don't necessarily have to do
Mhm.
everything all at once. It's simple shifts that can begin to make a difference."
It's simple, yeah. And I learned that early on, but it was reinforced through some of the oldest gardeners that I interviewed, the women that I interviewed in the book. They were very, they've had these simple habits and routines for years now. And I absolutely love that they are able to say, hey, listen, baby steps are still get you forward. They still take you forward. And so I hope, and I put this in the book because I'm always thinking about how people are responding to,
Right.
because you talking about self-care with Black women, there's a lot of resistance, so I'm always thinking about that. But I say in the book, like, I hope that you feel inspired, that you don't feel overwhelmed or anything, because everything here is meant to, again, rev that imagination so you can think about, okay, where am I, what
Mhm.
feels heavy, what do I need to let go of, where can I leave some of this in the past so that I can fully bloom without
Right.
hesitation or worry or shame or guilt.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, Tara. Again, I'm so excited to have you here because I can't even say when we first started following each other, but it's been a good while.
Yeah, it's
It's
been a
been a
minute.
good while. So just to be able to be a part of this, about a week out, your baby
Yeah.
is 8 days old.
Yes,
And we're
yes.
able to have this conversation. So I definitely suggest that, as I was saying before we came on, I think this is a good time because a lot of people, when we start looking at a new year and all of that, people really do start to think, well, what do I want to do differently, or what kind of types of changes that I might want to make. So this is a good book that can kind of help in that regard if you're thinking about those sorts of things. And I already mentioned I got a couple people I'm buying it for.
Yes,
so so
yes.
yeah, I definitely think. Oh, okay. So you just ordered it.
Oh,
Yes, yes, yes,
wonderful.
yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
yes. That's what we wanted. That's what we
Mhm.
wanted. So Tara, I know we are coming up on the holidays, so your tour and some of that is might be a little bit disjointed just for a couple of weeks.
Just a
But
little. Yeah.
what kinds of things do you have coming up that people might be able to come out and meet you or look for you in the weeks and months ahead?
Yeah. So
Uh-oh. It froze for a second, so hopefully
Tony.
it'll come right back. There we go. Yeah, it's frozen on my
Yeah,
end.
I got it, I think.
Okay.
Is it good?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
good.
Okay. So I will be at the Cuyahoga County Library tomorrow. And then I will be um, back at it after the new year. I'll be in Chicago. So if anybody is here watching this live or in the future from Chicago, I'll be there January 7th at Zora's Place, which is a brand new bookstore in Evanston, which I am just so excited about because I really want this book. I'm thrilled to have conversations like this, and I see people saying they bought it, which I really appreciate so much. But I think for me the biggest thing with this book is that I want to have these conversations. Like I love, I wrote this book so that people who couldn't make it to the self-care suites events and everything could have something that they could hold and it would help them. But I definitely still want to get out in the communities as much as possible because I believe so much in the stories within this book and the research within this book and the journaling prompts and the reflection questions. And there's a magic that happens when a Black woman realizes, like, oh, I am worth the effort to prioritize myself and to shift some things around so that I can feel whole again and feel happy and feel fulfilled. So there's a real magic that happens there. And I'm thrilled to speak to you and everybody. I'm thankful people watching because it's a conversation that it just needs to keep growing amongst Black women. And the more people that are talking about it, the better.
It absolutely does. And I don't know, I'm putting this out in the atmosphere. I don't know if it's already a part of the plan, but again, you talk to a whole lot of people. And of course,
Mhm.
you couldn't include,
Yeah.
a lot of that in the book. You had to narrow it down because, I mean, the book would be this thick, right?
It would.
Are there any plans to maybe do anything with the people or with some of those stories and stuff
Yeah.
like that so that people can kind of see, what,
Mhm.
Nancy in Chicago who's 83 said or whatever the case may be?
Yeah. I completely like I respect every single woman that sat down with me and shared her life and shared her story with me because I do believe we learn from each other. We really do. And so one of my goals for 2026 is to turn Bloom How You Must into an exhibit. And I want to use some of the audio that I captured during the interviews, and it'll be, clips and things like that. But I've already applied to a couple of funding opportunities to help make that a reality. And I'm really, really pressing on that because I really do absolutely believe that there's healing in these stories. And I think out of the 100 that I interviewed, I want to say like maybe 45, 50 or so made it into the book. I squeezed as many as many
Right,
of them as I could.
right.
But again, word count, it would have been 500
It would have
pages
been
for
really
sure.
thick.
Yeah, I definitely do want it to be in the meantime, I might do like a limited series podcast or something like that to get the stories out. But I definitely don't want them to just kind of languish on my hard drive. I really want them to be out in the world along with Bloom.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think that's a great idea, and I did see that you had applied for
Mhm.
something to do that. So we're
I
gonna,
did.
put that out in the atmosphere. We're
Put it
gonna
out
go, it's a touch and agree virtually that
there.
that's gonna come together for you because I just think that that's important because the people that you talk to, they're not celebrities and all that kind
Yeah.
of thing. It's regular, everyday women who are dealing with different things in life and can have some wisdom to share with others. So I just think it's important that we're able to tap into that wealth of knowledge. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. So Tara, I'm gonna let you take a break. I told you before I got some little announcements to make here, but I'm gonna let you grab some water and all that. But hang on for me for a couple of seconds. Again, I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone who has listened up to this point, and I will see you in just a second. And I have some announcements. So. Alrighty then. So yes, I was so happy to be able to talk to Tara. We have been, following each other on social media for quite a long time. And so it's an honor to be able to be a part of this process and see somebody who had an idea, a seed of an idea, and to see it come to fruition and all of the buzz and things like that she's getting on the heels of it. So I think that's pretty powerful. So if I know several people have said they've already bought the book, but if you have not and you're looking for it, it is available at the Brown Girl Collective Bookstore, which is just that, www.browngirlcollectivebookstore.com. And actually, Tara, I think somebody bought one from my bookstore a couple days ago. So people are picking it up from there as well. So that is an option that is available to you if you'd like to get a copy either for yourself or, if you already have a copy for yourself. I definitely think it would be a good holiday gift to share with a woman that you love. So I have some announcements now. On Monday, which if you're watching in real time, which will be December the 15th, will be the last actual live show with a guest that I'll be doing for the year. And we'll be talking to Addie Kitchens about Dominion. So if you have read Dominion or interested in Dominion, we'll be having this conversation on this upcoming Monday at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern. But on Wednesday, we will actually have our end of year review. And let me go ahead and pop that up. If you're not familiar, at the end of every year, I have been running something called a Lit Year in Review, which gives you an opportunity to vote for the best books by Black women throughout the year. So that is coming up for this year. If you go to that link there, you can find it. It's already active to go ahead and vote. There have been some people who have already started voting. I also put a QR code up there. If you go there, you will see the actual survey. And Tara's book is in there, even though it's new, because it's been getting a lot of buzz. She is in there under the self-care and wellness category. So if you'd like to vote for her and any other people in a lot of different genres, there's audiobooks are in there as well. Please take the time to do that at your earliest convenience so that I can compile that information and be able for us to be able to have the conversation on next Wednesday. And so there's 4 ways that you can support this endeavor. First is to go on and vote for your favorites, then to share the survey with a book-loving friend so they can vote as well. Save that date of Wednesday, December 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern. And to make sure that you don't forget, or if you're not able to catch it live, that you are able to see the replay, make sure that you subscribe to Brown Girl Collective on YouTube so you get alerts about all the different things that are coming up, because 2026 is on target to be another super year. I already have people booked all the way up through March already. So a lot of stuff is coming in the next year as well. So thank you again to everyone for being here. Thank you, Tara, for being a part of this conversation. I know that this is only the beginning of your work in putting books out into the world, and I look forward to seeing you and talking to you again for the next one. So in the meantime, in between time, until next week, go ahead and get your votes in, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you. And please, please, please continue to do all that you can to live well. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.